to assume either,
Watch.
and most critical scholars assume them without defending them. What do you think about that? Do you think that they, critical scholars defend their position, or they assume it, or there's just kind of two different ways of looking at it and they're equally valid? What are your thoughts?
I think they're just going off the data as they have it, and so when we have linguistic data and we can compare them, we should. I think that also what matters to me in this is that all of this is extremely what's the right word? It's very tenuous.
Jared, all of this is extremely very tenuous, very weak. He said it. His theories are very weak. Did you hear? Based on how much evidence?
Like I said, when people say, do I think that Yahweh originated in the area of Mount Seir in the south? And I'm like, that seems to be what the data indicates. Now, how many data points do we have for that? Like two?
Like two, Jared? This argument that Yahweh started from the south, Mount Seir, is only based on two data points. Two data they found. That's it. That's why it's very tenuous. You guys hearing it? You paranoid freaks? Not talking about you guys. Man. Damn, but he destroyed my faith, damn. Damn. He said Yahweh came from the south, and there were Baal worshippers in the north. And somehow, Yahweh became dominant. That's what he said. Yep. No, he didn't say that. He said it's very tenuous. It's only based on two data. Let's finish it.
And this is why I think anyone who wants to get on their high horse and say, Yahweh definitely did this and definitely did that, and this is this, and I'm like, how many data points do we have for this stuff, guys?
See that? Get on your horse, definitely. What are you being so certain about? We don't have much evidence. Listen.
So I think it's extremely tentative. And so I'm not, sometimes.
Extremely what? Extremely what, dude? Shoot.
Did this and definitely did that, and this is this, and I'm like, how many data points do we have for this stuff, guys? So I think it's extremely tentative. And so
extremely tentative. You remember what that word meant, right? So let's play it because it's 2 minutes. Just listen.
I'm not, sometimes I think people think, is Mark Smith going to die on the hill of this stuff? I hope not.
Mark Smith,
because I damn sure wouldn't.
I wouldn't die on this. I wouldn't stake my life on this theory. I'm not going to die for this theory. Are you listening? But him and Michael said that Yahweh was the pagan god. Now he does blaspheme, though. I don't know. That's why I'm wondering what kind of Orthodox Jew he is.
But again, it's when we go to the text and we go to the archaeology, this seems to be what we have, and it seems to be a story that makes good sense given the data that we have.
Seems to make good sense. Seems. It's a theory, dude.
But I'd be the first to tell you that data is tentative.
I'd be the first to tell you it's tentative. What more can the guy tell you, man? These commercials, Michael. Damn, dude. Okay, hold on.
And I definitely wouldn't, anyone who thinks that they can use it as a way of busting up someone's faith, that's just hubris in the extreme. It's laughable.
Did you hear that? You guy who sent me an email? If anyone thinks he can use this to destroy someone's faith, that's hubris. Extremely laughable. How come that part you didn't hear? Did you hear it? Rumble, did you hear what he said? If anyone thinks they can use this tenuous, tentative evidence based on two data points to destroy someone's faith, that's hubris. That's arrogance. Going beyond the evidence, and it's laughable. Right? Okay.
That if you have a tradition that makes your life meaningful, and you have a religious tradition that has built up a mythology and a spirituality, and someone thinks that an inscription in Moabite is going to be a weapon to knock down someone's faith. That's just humorously ridiculous. There's just something sub-juvenile about that I find ridiculous. And this is not an argument to knock someone's faith down. It's just saying, if you look at the data, this is what we got.
Did you hear it? Could he be any clearer, guys? You guys are listening, right? The people that got paranoid over what this guy was saying? Did you hear it? Okay, let's finish it.
That's what we got.
And before I go to other questions, I thought of another one. Again, we had talked about Exodus 6:3, where some interpret that to mean
Watch
Yahweh wasn't known prior to Moses, wasn't known to anyone prior to Moses. But then you see Genesis and also Exodus prior to Moses.
it. Now, what he's arguing is, in Exodus 6:2-3, God says to Moses, I am Yahweh, that is my name. I revealed myself, I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai. But by my name, Yahweh, I did not make myself known. Okay, that's what it says. So now Michael is saying, but in Genesis, they knew the name Yahweh. Now watch this theory. Watch this theory.
Or mostly just Genesis, I guess, saying that people called upon God as Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is well before the time of Moses. What do you think is going on there with the biblical writers? Because on the one hand, it looks like they're saying this was not known prior to Moses. On the other hand, the biblical writer is asserting that they were worshiping Yahweh. Melchizedek is a priest of the Most High, and Jethro worshipped Yahweh and stuff like that.
So watch.
I think it's just two writers.
See what he says? Because I believe there are two writers. I'm going to explain what he's saying. Exodus 6, I'm going to show you. There God says to Moses, I'm Yahweh, that is my name. But I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai. When he appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he says, I appeared to them as El Shaddai, but by my name Yahweh, I was not known to them. That's Exodus. So according to Exodus, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not know God as Yahweh. But then you read Genesis, and it shows that they're calling him Yahweh. So he's saying, oh, that's two different writers. Because he believes the theory that you have 4 written sources that make up the Pentateuch. 4. And if you want, go watch that clip. I think Christ Overall Jeremy clipped it. Someone just clipped it, and I shared it, where I answered that question for someone. So there was one written source where the writer preferred the name Elohim. So that's called the Elohist source. Then you had another written source where the writer preferred the name Yahweh. So that's called the Yahwist source. Then you had a written source that was all about the law, Deuteronomist. Then you had the priestly code, sacrifices. So these 4 sources were then combined together by priestly editors, and they were mixed in, fused together to give you the Torah. So what he's saying here is, yeah, those are 2 different writers. One preferred Yahweh, the other Elohim. Now, but watch why this argument is silly. Look, the 2 writers.
The clearest, I mean, to me, it's it's 2 traditions at least. I don't say writers. It's 2 traditions. There are 2 different traditions of Israelite literature, and they're coming together in one book. And you have editors trying to fix it. You know, so it seems to me that we just have 2 different traditions, and those 2 different traditions are reflecting 2 different modes of doing Israelite religion. So that seems to be, to me, the most likely answer.
Okay, now let me show you why his explanation makes no sense. Okay, now you got him admitting, right? You guys are paranoid, but all right. Now let me show you the argument. Please follow me so I can finish this point, and then I don't think I need to do a part 2. Okay, here's what he's trying to say. Sam, shut up, Sam. You're the prophesied Assyrian Baldy in the Bhagavad Gita, Sam. Okay. Okay, now watch here. Now, I've done sessions explaining what this means, right? So I won't go into it, but I want to show you why his theory makes no sense. Why? Why it makes no sense. Okay, let me enlarge it. Here, already in Genesis 22:14, Abraham knows God's name is Yahweh. He already knows his name is Yahweh, right? You listening? God bless you, brother. You listening? And Abraham called the name of that place, Yahweh will provide, as it is said this day, in the mount of Yahweh it will be provided. So here, Abraham calls it Yahweh Yireh. So he knows the name, right? Okay. So he knows the name, correct? Okay. Now, you got to listen, guys. I'm trying to help you so you don't panic. Oh, brother, but these contradiction, brother. I don't know how to, Jesus. All right. Exodus 6, 2-3. God spoke further to Moses, said to him, I am Yahweh, and I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, but by my name Yahweh I was not known to them. We got a contradiction, fam. It says they didn't know him as Yahweh. But here it says they did. So what is his claim? The reason why you have this contradiction is because these are two traditions that were combined together by editors, right? And hence the contradiction. Now, if you are somewhat smart, which I know it's kind of difficult for our brother Vartan, Full Armor Apologetics, he really strains to think logically. Notice what he told you. This is a different tradition from this one that was combined by editors who try to fuse them together. Can you then explain to me why then did the editors not change this? You're telling me they didn't see this? They were not aware of this so-called contradiction? So either these editors sucked, these editors were terrible, these editors were bad, or they realized there is no contradiction. Because if you're editing these traditions to fuse them together, to make them sound coherent, then why do you leave in the contradiction? Why not change this? Why even add it? Why not just delete it? Why not just delete it? So are you telling me these editors were stupid? They were inept, incompetent? That they are taking traditions that are contradictory, doing nothing to harmonize them or hide the contradictions. Or maybe there's a better answer. They understood what this passage meant, and they understood there's no contradiction with this. See how they just spun a theory? You see how they just created a theory based on their inability to understand these two passages? See how that works? Yeah, I already answered it before, but I'll probably have to answer it again. I'll answer it a little later. You see it, right? So the editors left the so-called contradiction in because that tells you there was no contradiction. They knew what it meant, and they knew there is no contradiction if you perform due diligence. But these lazy liberal asses, they want to create contradictions. Right? Lord willing, I'll answer it a little later. But now let's play another clip where again he's going to admit, yeah, these theories are weak. These theories are weak. And they're not based on solid evidence. That's why the theories can change. So we're going to 1 hour, 4 minute mark. You guys okay? We go through this? Or are you getting bored already? 1 hour, 4 minute mark. Now, I'm not.
And so we have the.
If I can see how stupid these arguments are, there's hope for the rest of you, especially for Vartan. So let's go to the 1 hour, 4 minute mark. Will he admit again these are weak theories? Yep. Again, he's going to admit it. Let's go here. Okay, let's start here. Ready?
No. It hurt you. But I just made a video that hurt just now. It's slipping my Yahweh on the mind. Yeah, right. It'll come to me. But yeah, folks, if you're interested in esotericism from an academic point of view, you're welcome to come check out Esoterica. Also do focus some stuff on ancient Near East mythology because it seems like there's an interest in that. which it gets weirdly not covered with the ancient Near East, especially Canaanite mythology. For whatever reason, just doesn't get a lot of coverage. I don't know why that is. Also, it's perplexing to me that the folks are so fascinated by this Yahweh mythology, which I made that video on a lark, and it like blew up, and now everyone's like, "Tell me about Yahweh," and I'm like, "Got to read Mark Smith's book, and Michael Heiser and all kinds of other folks who have done work on this. They're the real experts."
You mentioned, he said, read Mark Smith's book, Michael Heiser. They're the expert on the origin of the name Yahweh. Remember this. Did you hear it? Go read Michael Heiser. Well, I did. He's read Michael Heiser, but he rejects Michael Heiser's response to one of his objections because they don't care. Did you hear him say, go read Michael Heiser, I'm not the expert? Did you guys hear that? Please remember that. Because I'm now going to show you how Michael Heiser explains Deuteronomy 32. But now watch.
I mean, it's fascinating, but there's a huge lacuna here, right? There's not a lot of people talking about it. So I think that's why people have kind of gravitated to videos like what you've produced.
Yeah, and I wonder why that is. What about there's something strange about the Yahweh stuff, is that on the one hand, there seems to be a lot of interest. On the other hand, there seems to be a lot of trepidation about talking about this topic. And I'm not sure what exactly explains that. Maybe it's a theological anxiety that if you historicize Yahweh, then you kind of everything gets historicized. But I think it seems to me that any faith weak enough to be rattled by a guy on YouTube talking about 2 data points about what might have been the case about an ancient deity.
He just rebuked these Catholics that started getting paranoid. Is your faith that weak that a guy on YouTube like me, who based on 2 data points can rattle your faith? He just rebuked these guys. Is it ironic? The guy who sent me an email watched this and heard him say this. And he said, dude, if my argument based on 2 data points, as weak as it is, can rattle your faith, you ain't got no faith. You're a joke. Did you hear it? Now watch.
Much of a faith. I don't know. I just people ask me, how do you reconcile the fact that you're a Jew and this? How do you reconcile that material? I'm like, I don't. Like the data is so spare on the.
Did you hear it? The data is so spare. It's lacking. And you build an entire theory out of it. Please hear it. Are you guys listening? Watch it again.
A theological anxiety that if you historicize Yahweh, then you kind of
like
everything gets historicized. But I think it seems to me that any faith weak enough to be rattled by a guy on YouTube talking about 2 data points about what might have been the case about an ancient deity. Much of a faith. I don't know. I just people ask me, how do you reconcile the fact that you're a Jew and this? How do you reconcile that material? I'm like, I don't. Like the data is so spare on the one hand, and also I don't take my mythology literally. I take it seriously, but not literally.
See, the evidence is weak. It's based on 2 data points. Very weak, tentative, tenuous. It's just a theory. We may be wrong if we have more data. But notice another thing he said, and I don't know if you know this. This was documented by, believe it or not, Stephen Anderson, Marching to Zion, where he destroyed Christian Zionism. Shockingly, this was documented in that documentary. I don't know if it's still on YouTube. He interviewed rabbis, and now you're going to understand why our Lord said what he said. Did you know most of the Orthodox rabbis think the Bible is stories and myths? It's not really history, because the Bible is simply stories and myth with a coded message that needs to be deciphered. So they have absolutely no problem with the Old Testament being mythological. Do you know that? This is not a minority view, what he's articulating. In the documentary, Marching to Zion, so it's deleted, huh? Find it on Rumble if you can. Marching to Zion, They interviewed Orthodox rabbis. They go, it's stories. It's myth. It's not supposed to be history. It's stories and myth. It has coded messages, which is ironic because Jesus accused the Jews of his day, you don't believe what Moses wrote. Now, that's kind of baffling because why would the Lord say to the Jews, you don't believe what Moses wrote? Because if you believe Moses, you believe me, but you don't believe him. Now we get it because early on, Satan influenced the Jews to dehistoricize the law and treat it as simply myth and coded messages that you need a rabbi to decipher. Okay? Do you know that? Exactly. This is a form of Gnosticism.
And so it's not a place where I need, if all of it turned out to be true, I'd be like, that's historically interesting and has nothing to do with Judaism.
See? Even if it's true, Jared, interesting historically, nothing to do with Judaism. So he just admitted to you. Okay, so marching on Zion is on Rumble. He just admitted to you Judaism has nothing to do with history. The Old Testament is nothing but myth and stories and legends that need a rabbi to decode to get the real message. So even if it's historically false, who cares? Judaism has nothing to do with whether the Old Testament is historical. Do you understand? That's not Peter, that's Paul, Nick. You're trying hard, but please don't embarrass us. It's Paul. Please, don't hurt me like that, because you're showing you're also a myth. Okay, you with me there? So let's continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for people to have these conversations and not feel threatened to hear the views and engage them. I do think the trepidation is due to theological concerns on part of many people. I'm sure that's where it's coming from.
It could be, and yeah, I think it could be that, but it's just a pity that. I guess, when our theologies stifle our intellectual curiosity, that worries the hell out of me.
Yeah, there's a quick comment here that I think is probably true. Lewis says, my take is...
Okay, the data points that you say are so weak, can they be interpreted differently? Watch you who got paranoid. The data that you're looking at, can it also be validly interpreted in a different way? Listen.
There's always a different way to look at the data points. That's been my personal assessment in the little that I know. It seems like there's multiple ways in which you can look at it. There's one way in which you could say, okay, well, maybe the Israelites got this from other pagan nations. And then I'm also seeing others say, well, no, maybe God revealed himself as Yahweh to everyone. And some of these pagan nations are still retaining that memory of what God revealed. So there's like always two different ways to look at the same data point.
Sure.
See, Michael often trying to give respectful pushback so that these audience won't panic in their faith. Do you hear what he said? Sure. Listen to it again. Sure.
Retaining that memory of what God revealed. So there's like always two different ways to look at the same data point.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that it's not just that, but like I said, the data itself is so spare.
The data itself is so spare. Yeah. And not only that, the data is spare. So this is not solid facts. Just a theory, man. Can we hear that again, you paranoid freaks? One more time, please.
Retaining that memory of what God revealed. So there's like always two different ways to look at the same data point.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that it's not just that, but like I said, the data itself is so spare.
Sure.
That anyone who wants to get on their high horses about, you take two historical data points and build a mythology. I mean, come on, folks. We have to admit when the data is provisional, but also we have to admit that seems to be the data. And
do you hear it? Could it be any clearer? You get on a high horse with two data points. It's provisional, meaning it's open to change. But this seems to be the best explanation. But sure, you can look at it from a different perspective. You can see it from a different angle. Are we okay now, you paranoid freaks? Because I got a few more clips to play.
there's a great myth in I think it's in the Midrash, where Hashem goes to all the nations of the world and pitches giving them the Torah, and all the nations are like, no, that's a pain. I'm not doing that. And eventually the Israelites take it. To your point, it could be the case that, from a mythological point of view or faith point of view, that, God may have shown up all kinds of places, and people have, all kinds of so-called pagan nations have half remembered this stuff. Also, it shouldn't be so surprising to find out that Yahweh was worshipped among lots of other gods in ancient Israel, because the prophets tell us that in the Bible. It's not like
the prophets say that God made himself known to the nations, which makes sense if you take it as history, because all the nations ascended from Noah, and they would have carried with them the knowledge of that God. But as time went on, demons appearing as gods deceived them. So what are you shocked, man?
That's like, anyone who's shocked by that just hasn't even read the Bible.
Right. Exactly.
So you're like,
there.
Yeah, people are like, oh, the Israelites are henotheists. I'm like, we could have come down to that conclusion 2,000 years ago just by reading the Bible.
Yeah.
So I find that what surprises and shocks people is mostly because they just haven't even read the Bible.
Like that email I got. See, what a slap in the face. The same interview that emailer went berserk and freaked out. In the interview, if you didn't panic, he said, dude, it's based on 2 data points. It's a theory. It's very weak. It's not solid. It's provisional. It's not written in stone. It's weak, and you can interpret data differently, come to a different conclusion, because you don't know what the future will bring, that we're going to have to revise our theory. And the fact that you're shocked that the nations would worship Yahweh and other gods shows you don't know your Bible. You're biblically illiterate. That's why you're paranoid. What a rebuke. What a rebuke. Yeah, the email I read, Jerby. Do something, Sam. I'm begging you.
Not that the data is surprising, but that
ignorance.
That there's ignorance, and then there's just the idea that ancient peoples are somehow more pious than us, or something like that. The same was true in the Middle Ages. I don't think those people were any more pious than us now. I think that there have always been people, and there've always been people who are really religious, and always people who really didn't care. And I imagine that back then there were also people who were like, we go to pray to Yahweh and the rain doesn't come, we're switching teams. We're going with Baal this year.
I'm sure there are people like that.
I'm sure there were people. Absolutely sure there were people like that. And so that would not be surprising at all. And who knows what I'd have been, who knows what anyone would have been. When your family doesn't get the food they need, you might switch teams too.
Okay, so did you hear from the horse's mouth? My case is not based on solid evidence. It's not irrefutable. It's tentative, tenuous, meaning weak, flimsy, provisional. And you can interpret it legitimately a different way. The data. All right, so we got that right. All right, now, and remember he mentioned, Michael Eisner, I got about 4 more clips, guys. Can you hang? Or are you tired? Because I'm going to show you some shocking blasphemies coming from an Orthodox Jew. Are you ready? Some shocking blasphemy. All right. Remember he mentioned Mike Kaiser. All right. Let's go into some of these blasphemies. You ready? Let's go to the 22-minute mark. You guys enjoying this thus far, or are you tired? Because I just wanted to do this today, and we're done. I don't think I'm going to do a part 2. There's no need to. 22-minute. Let's go 30-second one. Okay, let me see. Is it 22? Let's hear. 30. Watch here. Look what he calls David.
David have killed. If I were an upstart warlord like David, and maybe a psychopath. I mean, David was probably something of a psychopath.
Did you hear it? David was something of a psychopath, and this is an Orthodox Jew. Did you hear it? Did you guys hear it? Watch how he's going to blaspheme God, and he's an Orthodox Jew. Did you hear it? One more time.
David have killed. If I were an upstart warlord like David, and maybe a psychopath. I mean, David was probably something of a psychopath.
Sure.
That'd be a perfect God for me. I don't think I'd want any other God than a youthful warrior storm deity. That seems to be the kind of deity that would be on your team if you really wanted to do the kind of conquest that certainly people like Saul and David were up to.
Now, what he means is David, Saul described God as a warrior God, a God who fights, slays his enemies. He goes, that makes sense because David is a psychopath. He's a bloodthirsty psychopath, and it makes sense he wants God to be a psychopath like him. Do you hear it? Oh, but wait. Oh, you thought that was bad. You ready? Ready for this one? 10-minute, 35-second mark. He's an Orthodox Jew, huh? Get watch here. Watch here. Listen to this. You ready? We got a few more clips. And this video rocked that Catholic's faith. Okay, watch here. 10-minute, 35-second. Right? 11 minute. Okay, let's watch it.
Extra biblical references to these names.
Yeah, absolutely. El is a very well attested deity in the Canaanite mythologies, the patriarch of the Canaanite mythology. I think when most people imagine God sort of as the loving old man, the grandfather version of God, the sort of God we see on the Sistine Chapel, they're imagining El.
Did you catch it? The pagan Canaanites, their high god was named El, E-L-L. He was called the father of years. He was depicted as an elderly being, father of years. He was very old. And he had 70 sons who were gods. Baal was one of them. And I said he had a huge male organ, very sexually active, and he was a drunkard pervert. That's who they viewed their God as, El. So he goes, when you imagine God as an older figure, you're actually thinking of the pagan God, not Yahweh. Now watch, look what he says. Watch, listen, please.
That's El. El is sort of the grandfatherly old God. He's associated with bulls. He also likes to drink. He, in fact, gets so drunk one time that he falls down in his own vomit and urine. It's a great scene in one of the Canaanite myths.
Jared, in one of the Canaanite myths, El got so drunk, he started vomiting and pretty much pissing on himself, urinating. And he's laughing. You guys listening to this, right? This was enjoyable. I like listening to it because this guy's arguments don't shake my faith. Because glory to the Holy Spirit, the same Spirit that fills me, fills you, loves me, loves you, may seal us to see how stupid these arguments are. But now watch the blasphemy. Yep, like Dionysius. Watch the blasphemy. You guys ready? Okay. You want to hear the blasphemy? Okay, watch. Remember, he's an Orthodox Jew. Man, if you talk like this about God, I don't know what to tell you. Watch.
Which is, again, we shouldn't forget that Yahweh also demands that he get beer. He gets if you look at the calculations for how much beer Yahweh gets a day, it's about a 6-pack a day.
Do you hear it? According to the Old Testament sacrificial system, they're supposed to give strong drink to Yahweh, a libation, drink offering they pour out, because God needed a 6-pack of beer every day, daily. But now watch how he now is going to mock God. Yes, I need ask the Shia to interpret your arguments. Get the out of here.
Where's that a reference to?
In the sacrificial system in the temple.
Watch.
So when the priest brings sacrifices, one of the sacrifices they bring is sheker, strong drink, it's beer.
Watch.
And so God is, the Israelites imagine God consuming that. So God's getting about a 6-pack of beer a day, which is not bad. I mean, maybe needs an intervention.
Did you hear it? Maybe God needs an intervention because he's addicted to beer. Did you hear it? An Orthodox Jew blaspheming God. Did you hear it? Watch out, listen.
Today it's about a 6-pack a day.
Where's that a reference to?
In the sacrificial system in the temple. So when the priest brings sacrifices, one of the sacrifices they bring is sheker, strong drink, it's beer. And so God is, the Israelites imagine God consuming that. So God's getting about a 6-pack of beer a day, which is not bad. I mean, maybe needs an intervention.
Jared, The God he claims to worship gets a 6-pack of beer a day, maybe because he's an alcoholic, he needs an intervention. Did you hear it? And this guy is an Orthodox Jew. God needs an intervention too, because he drinks 6-pack of beer a day. All right. We got about 4 more clips. Let's go to the 55-minute mark. You want to see more blasphemies? He doesn't believe the Old Testament's history. It's all myths. And he does think archaeology supports the Exodus, which again, he's out in the forest. Go to Dr. David Falk, a conservative Egyptologist, showing you there's massive archaeological evidence for an Exodus, and shows you that the author of the Pentateuch knew Exodus geography more than this guy claims. But he's parroting liberal arguments. I'll get you the website. But watch here. Let's go to 55-minute mark. Let's go here. Ready? Watch here. Watch how bad it gets. Ready?
Northerners certainly thought they were worshiping Yahweh.
Lewis asks another question. Don't the destruction layers in Tel Hazor lend evidence to an Israelite conquest in the 14th century BC? Any thoughts on that one?
So there is a destruction layer at Tel Hazor, but that's the only one.
It's only one.
So if we take all the other places allegedly destroyed, Jericho, we don't see destruction layers at Megiddo, other places. So if it is the case that the Israelites came marching in, and so there's 2 things here, right? One thing is, if they did come marching in, they destroyed one relatively small town. That's not much to brag about. And secondly, if they did invade, and if they did do what the Bible says they did, they were genocidal maniacs.
Genocidal maniacs. Sounds like Muslims, what they say about the Old Testament. David, Dan McClellan. Watch what he calls Yahweh. Remember, he's an Orthodox Jew. He's saying the Old Testament is all garbage. It's a lie. These wars did not take place. If it did, then look what he says about God. If these wars were historical, look what he says. Listen.
They murdered men, women, and children. They engaged in ambushes to lure people out to murder them more efficiently.
Listen.
So if we want to go the direction of the biblical narrative, we get mass murderers. And that's not a direction that I'm super comfortable going. And that makes Yahweh, by the way, like Ted Bundy in the sky.
Yahweh is Ted Bundy in the sky. If you take the command to exterminate the Canaanites as real history instead of myth, because it's a story, it's not historical, Yahweh is the Ted Bundy in heaven, a divine mass murderer. Listen to it again. Okay, listen.
Want to go the direction of the biblical narrative, we get mass murderers. And that's not a direction that I'm super comfortable going. And that makes Yahweh, by the way, like Ted Bundy in the sky. In fact, way worse than Ted Bundy.
He's way worse than Ted Bundy.
Just a serial killer divine. Just a blitzkrieg, right? Just his Einsatzgruppen. That's what Yahweh is. So either we get the destruction the way the Bible describes it, and we get a genocidal maniac, or we get Chetzor destroyed. And that seems to be one town.
Yeah.
And again, Chetzor is a town of 1,000 people, maybe less. So I think that what's much more likely for the destruction layer at Chetzor is what the data indicates to us, is that what we have at that time period is just a bunch of little city-states. And those little city-states were in constant conflict. Also, it's worth pointing out that if Moses existed during the time of Ramses or even before or after, if they would have walked out into the desert of the Sinai, they would have walked out into Egyptian territory.
See, that's how you know Exodus didn't happen, because whoever wrote Exodus is an ignoramus. Well, it shows he's an ignoramus, outdated. Dr. David Falk, conservative Egyptologist. I want to show you his YouTube channel. He shows you the massive archaeological evidence for an Exodus taking place. And he shows you the internal evidence proves that the author knew his geography, knew the wilderness, knew Egypt, knew their customs, Spot on. The guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I'll give you the website and said, but listen.
Egyptian garrison towns all through the Sinai. If they'd have walked into the Transjordan, there would have been Egyptian garrison towns at least on this side of the Jordan.
See?
And if they'd have walked into down to the Shvela or in the north, there are Egyptian garrison towns there. It's like saying we escaped out of Egypt and therefore we left the United States. It was still firmly Egyptian territory all the way up, at least since Ramses II, all the way up.
An Orthodox Jew attacking his own heritage, the Old Testament, dude. With friends like these, you don't need Muslims.
Up to Kadesh, where he had signed the peace treaty there with the Hittite king. So that entire territory, and you can still see scarabs and other ivory stuff recovered from Megiddo that are clearly Egyptian. So that entire area would have been under Egyptian hegemony. So again, the Exodus, the writer of the Exodus story doesn't know that history, and therefore
he doesn't know that history.
They have to kind of fudge it because they don't, they're not really that well versed in the actual history. So I think that,
which is a lie. The evidence from the Pentateuch shows the author knows Egyptian customs, the geography of the wilderness, and uses more Egyptian loanwords than any other book of the Old Testament. And I'm going to give you a YouTube channel, Dr. David Falk. In fact, Inspiring Philosophy did an excellent documentary showing you the archaeological evidence that there was an Exodus. Inspiring Philosophy.
That what we get in the Exodus story is some distant memories of something, but I think mostly myth making.
Myth making. All right. Now let me get you those websites. And bear with me, brethren. We're almost done. I hope you didn't think it was a waste of time. And this is the guy that shook some guy's faith. Right? This supposedly shook some guy's faith. So let me show you Dr. David Falk. He is an Egyptologist. His entire YouTube channel is about proving from archaeology and history the Exodus took place. Now, he believes that the Exodus took place way earlier, like 13th century BC. There are others, like David Roll says, we should re-examine the dating of the Egyptian dynasties. Whatever the case, there's massive evidence. So you go to David Falk right here, Ancient Egypt in the Bible. He will destroy all the arguments claimed by this liberal. So here it is, guys. Thank the Lord for internet and for these great men of God who are giving you the evidence that these liberals don't give you. Right here. And not only that, exactly, servant. Not if, when it happened. If you go to Inspiring Philosophy, he has a documentary of all the archaeological evidence showing an exodus of Israel occurred. A documentary, or you go to Inspiring Philosophy. And he's also brought on Dr. David Falk to refute these liberals who mock the Exodus account, showing that they're ignorances and dishonest. It's not wishful thinking. Here, you put in here, Exodus, documentary, Exodus. So he does some great work, Inspiring Philosophy. As long as he stays in his lane, he's phenomenal. Exodus Rediscovered documentary. The Conquest. Look, rediscovered. Right here, playlist. Let's get you the playlist. Don't let them lie to you. The evidence for the Exodus is massive. Massive. Right there, you guys got it? Inspiring Philosophy, put an Exodus documentary, and there it goes. Go watch it. God has vindicated the scriptures as historically accurate. Okay? There you go. Right there, guys. So we got a few more clips. Let me give you again David Falk again. Don't miss this channel. He believes in an earlier dating for the Exodus. Glory to God. Who cares? We were not going to get into that fight. As long as the evidence is there, an Exodus took place. Right? Yep, exactly, brother Connor. So here it is again. Okay. We got 3 more clips. Can you hang so we can finish it? Hang. Because he mentioned Michael Heiser, right? The same. Remember what he said? Why come to me? Go to Mark Smith, Michael Heiser. They're the scholars. So he's admitting Heiser was a scholar. Go learn from him. All right. Why did you ignore what Heiser said about Deuteronomy 32? So what am I getting at? Let's go here. All right. Let me jump to first where he claims Baal and Yahweh were actually, at one point in Israelite history, considered one and the same deity, but as time went on, they were separated and differentiated. Let's play that clip. Again, theories, right? Remember what he said? Theories? It's not from the text. It's they're reading into the text. So we go to 18-minute, 14-second mark. Right here. Listen.
So why do so many homes in Maricopa
It's your
County need a
little
flooring
garbage
replacement?
can, piece of garbage, you in Maricopa.
The Baal cycle that we've recovered from Ugarit, we know that Baal was the lord of those rains, and so was quite a popular agricultural deity. Baal also fought death and defeated death, at least temporarily, and also famously fights a serpent, Lotan, which is cognate to the Hebrew Leviathan.
Okay, what
And
he
so
means is
we have
they found archaeological data where Baal is described as destroying the serpent and conquering the sea, Yam, and destroying death. Now, why is that interesting? Because some of the language used for Baal and destroying his enemies mimics the language of the Old Testament in reference to Yahweh destroying the serpent, or Yahweh destroying the sea, Yam, or Yahweh destroying Mot. So what does that mean? Okay, this is how they read it. Their argument goes like this. Well, since we find virtually the same language in the Canaanite myths about Baal defeating Mot, death, or Yam, the sea, taken to be gods, or the serpent, that we find in the Old Testament, where Yahweh is described as conquering the sea, destroying the serpent, conquering death, that means there's some borrowing going on, and it may mean that at one